Hi, my name is Niamh Kenny and I'm a clinical specialist physiotherapist in urogynecology. And this video is to give you some advice and information while you're on the waiting list for your physiotherapy appointment for your urogynecological problems. And there's plenty of things that you can do to help yourself while you're waiting for this appointment. So I'm going to go through some of these and it asks you to have a think about it, have a look at some of these things and see what things you can be working on while you're waiting for your appointment. So the first thing is to improve your fluid habits, particularly if you're suffering with bladder urgency. So it's normal to drink between 6 to 8 glasses of fluid in a day. So that's about 1.5 litres to 2 litres of fluid every day. We don't want you to be drinking lots more than this or a lot less than this because either of these things can cause problems for your bladder. It's also a good idea to reduce any bladder irritants that you're drinking, such as tea or coffee or fizzy drinks, alcohol and drinks with artificial sweeteners in them. Try to drink mostly water if possible. Switch to decaf tea or herbal tea, but not green tea because that has caffeine in it. And it's wise to space out your drinks during the day, but avoid drinking 2 hours before bed if getting up at night is bothersome for you. And take your drink slowly. If you knock back a drink quickly, it can cause a sudden bladder stretch, and that can trigger urgency. If you have a look at this website, you can see here, www.oab.ie, there's lots of advice and information on that about bladder urgency and bladder habits. So have a good look at that. This picture here just shows some of the food and drinks that may be irritating your bladder. And this is different for everybody, but it's worth having a look at. So for some people, dairy products will aggravate the bladder, or acidic foods such as pineapple. We've mentioned coffee and tea, alcohol and carbonated drinks, so fizzy drinks. Tomato-based products can also aggravate the bladder. Citrus fruits, chocolate, it can be an irritant for the bladder, and spicy foods. So it'd be a good idea to have a look at some of these things and see if eliminating some of them for a few weeks makes a difference to your bladder symptoms. It may not, but it's worth having a look at. The other thing then is to have a look at your toilet habits. So we're all taught as children, we're toilet trained, and we're trained to go to the toilet in the toilet. But often we're not taught about what's the best way to go to the toilet. So it's important to always sit on the toilet, to not hover over it, even in public toilets. And that surprises a lot of people because they think they'll get an infection if they're sitting on public toilets. But actually, you're way more likely to get bladder infections because you're not sitting on the toilet, because you end up not emptying your bladder fully. You end up holding on to some urine, and that causes bladder infections in a lot of people. So it's important to always sit on the toilet. Don't hover over it. If you're worried about the toilet seat, wipe it down, bring some wipes in your bag, put some toilet paper on the toilet, but sit and relax. Some people feel like they don't empty fully when they're going to the toilet, so it can help to rock back and forth on the seat and circle around on the toilet seat to empty completely. If you have a problem with dribbling after you've been to the toilet, well then it can be helpful to try some pelvic floor exercises on the toilet after you've emptied it and before you wipe to close everything off. It's also really important to stop going just in case. A lot of women that I see go to the toilet just in case. Every time they walk out the door, every time they pass the toilet, they go just in case. And if you're doing that regularly, that can actually train your bladder to be accepting smaller amounts instead of larger amounts. So try not to do that. Another issue that we see are women whose bladder urgency is triggered by the sound of running water. And it can help to break that cycle if you make sure that you're not urinating when running water is actually happening. So for instance, when you're having a shower, a lot of people will turn on the shower to heat it up, and then they're going to the toilet with the shower running. And that creates an association in their brain between running water and urinating. So don't do that. Go to the toilet first and then turn on the shower. Or some people will run the taps while they're going to the toilet for privacy so nobody knows they're peeing. It's not a good idea. Again, you're creating an association in your brain between the sound of running water and peeing. And then that becomes a problem at other times in the day when you hear running water and you suddenly are bursting to go to the toilet or you leak. So there's some habits you can have a look at. There's some more in this slide here. So when you're going to the toilet, it's important that you let go and that you relax your pelvic floor muscles, that you let the urine flow out in one solid steady stream. So don't be straining or holding your breath to push the urine out. Don't be trying to speed it up or make it go faster. Just take your time, let it come out naturally. And don't stop and start the flow once you've started going. Years ago, that used to be taught as an exercise to women after they've had babies. They were advised to stop and start the flow of urine on the toilet because you do use your pelvic floor muscles when you're doing that. But it can interfere with normal bladder emptying, and it's not a good thing to do as an exercise. So we don't advise that anymore. Sometimes we advise it as a test. So if you're able to stop the flow of urine, then you did use your pelvic floor muscles correctly. So that's good. It gives us some information, but don't do it regularly as an exercise. Avoid rushing urgently to the bathroom. Avoid regularly going under 3 hours or over 4 hours. So you want to be going about every 3 to 4 hours during the day. You want to have bladder control to help you urinate when and where you choose. And this is something we're going to work with you on. But it's just to understand, I suppose, what's normal for a bladder, that you should be able to hold on for 3 to 4 hours without going, unless you've put a lot of fluid in or unless you've put a lot of bladder irritants in. Ideally, we'd want you to be sleeping throughout the night. Unless you're over 70 years of age, then it can be normal to get up during the night. It's normal to go between 0 to 1 times in the night, unless you're pregnant or you're over 65 years of age. It's important to stay hydrated so that your urine is healthy. So avoid getting dehydrated. A lot of women will try and manage their leaking and their urgency by reducing their fluids, and they end up then with overly concentrated urine, and that actually irritates their bladder. So looking at the colour of urine can be helpful. If you have a look at your urine and it's this kind of honey colour or syrupy colour at the bottom of the scale here, you're dehydrated. If it's kind of a dark yellow, you're starting to get dehydrated, you need to drink some water soon. Your urine should be transparent yellow or a pale straw colour. If your urine is clear, you could be drinking too much fluid. So some people experience bladder urgency and leaking because they're overloading their bladder and drinking way too much fluid in the day. So just watch out for that as well. You'll be sent a bladder diary with your appointment, and you can also download this on our website. And this is really helpful information for us. So it's tricky to do, but I would strongly encourage you to do it because it helps us to plan your treatment. It gives us a good baseline so that we know where you're at. It also helps you to have more awareness about your bladder habits. And like I said, it helps us to plan treatment, and then we can see your progress as well. When we're working with bladder issues, it takes time, and sometimes the progress is slow, and it can be easy to give up. But if you've been measuring it, you'll be more motivated to keep going. You'll actually notice your progress better. So the bladder diary will look something like this. You're asked to do it over a period of 2 days. Okay, so 2 days back to back. So pick 2 days where you have the mental concentration to be able to do this, or the privacy to be able to do this. You will need to buy a plastic jug with milliliters measured on the side of it. So what you're going to do is every hour you're going to write down, if you had a drink, what kind of drink was it? Was it water? Was it tea or coffee, Coke? What was it? Then we need to know how many milliliters of that drink you took. So telling me it's a cup or a mug doesn't really give me enough information. I want to know how many milliliters are in your mug. Some people have very big mugs, some people have very small cups. People will say, oh, I had a bottle of water, but I don't know how much water was in that bottle. So I need to know how many milliliters of fluid you had in that hour. And then when you went to the toilet, I need you to measure the amount of urine that you passed. So this is the tricky bit, where you need to pee into the jug and look and see how many mils of urine came out. Was it 50 mils? Was it 250? Was it 500? Look at it, throw it in the toilet, and then write down how much urine you had when you went to the toilet. And this part is very important as well, the urge. What kind of urge did you have when you went to the toilet? Was there no urge? Were you just passing a toilet and you thought, sure, I may as well go in, that's going just in case? Was there a mild urge? You could feel some sensation of urine there, but you didn't really need to go to the toilet. You could have waited an hour if you needed to, and the urge might go away again if you'd ignored it for a while. Was it a type 2 urge? Was there a mild to moderate desire to void? You feel, yeah, I need to go to the toilet, but you could wait 30 minutes if you needed to. Was it a type 3 urge? Was it a really strong desire to void? But you could wait 15 minutes, but it's kind of important, is at the top of your mind, I need to go to the toilet shortly now. Or was it a type 4 urge? Was it a really urgent desire to go and you couldn't wait for 5 minutes? You'd have to be going right away. You might be, if you're at the queue at Arnott's, you might be saying, sorry ladies, I need to go to the front of the queue. It's a really strong urge. So I want to know what kind of urge you had and what volume was there when you went to the toilet. If there's any pain, take a note of that. And if you have been wet in that hour, take a note of that. And if you notice what made you leak, was it you were trying to get to the toilet and you leaked on the way? Was it that you coughed or sneezed? Was it that you got out of the chair or picked up a child? Was it, you don't know, you just leaked, it just came out, it just seemed to be happening without you noticing it. So just write down any notes about what you noticed about your leaking. And you do that over 2 days. And you write down the time that you got up in the morning and the time that you went to bed. And you record any times that you get up during the night to go to the toilet. So what would we like to see in a bladder diary? In a perfect bladder diary, we'd like to see that somebody was able to fill up to around 500 mils when they needed to. So in the morning, there should be a good large volume there. Or if they weren't able to get to the toilet for hours and hours, they should be able to hold up to 500 mils. Now they'd be bursting at that point, but they could do it. We'd want to see that they're emptying about 5 or 6 times in the day, maybe a little bit more than that, but around that. Like I said, going no times at night or going once at night could be normal. We'd like to see that the urge would be mild to moderate, between 250 and 350 mils. That there'd be a strong urge if somebody had 350 to 500 mils in their bladder, and that they'd have an urgent urge at around 450 mils upwards. We'd like to see a urine output in total of between 1.5 litres and 1.8 litres per day, and that their urine should be a pale yellow colour. So doing the bladder diary will teach you a lot, and it'll help us a lot with your treatment. So please have that done for your first appointment if at all possible. And it's a good idea to take a photo of it as well, in case you lose it or forget to bring it with you. So the next thing we're going to have a look at is improving your bowel habits. So if you're having bladder issues, having good bowel habits can really help to improve your bladder issues, because the bowel puts pressure on the bladder. If you're having prolapse issues, improving your bowel habits can really help with the symptoms of that, because it reduces the straining and the pushing, which can aggravate your prolapse. So in physiotherapy, we have a good look at your bowel habits. We'll be asking you questions about how often you go to the toilet, and what does it look like, and what does it feel like when you're going, and are you able to empty fully? And all these kind of questions can really help us with your treatment. So in the meantime, I would encourage you, if you have constipation, you know you're constipated, to do something about that. Maybe it means drinking more fluid, maybe it means looking at your diet and improving that. Maybe it means having a chat with your doctor, because some of the medication that you're on is making you constipated, and they could maybe give you a different type of medication, or you might need a supplementary laxative. So do something to try and improve your bowel habits before you come to physiotherapy if you can. We would ideally like you to be going every day without any straining. And it can really help if you put a little stool in under your feet, like a little toddler stool. That gets your knees up higher than your hips, and that allows the muscles of your pelvic floor to relax and lengthen, and that can make a massive difference to emptying your bowels. It can also make a difference if you learn how to use your tummy muscles properly to push out a bowel motion. So a lot of people will hold their breath to push out a bowel motion, and that's not great. That tends to strain things down below. Other people tend to suck their belly in to push the bowel motion out, and that's not great either, because that can make their pelvic floor muscles tense, and then they don't relax and lengthen properly. So we encourage what we call a bulging and bracing of your tummy muscles, and that's where you breathe in and you let your tummy expand outwards, and then you breathe out, and as you breathe out, you push your tummy muscles out as if you were trying to burst the waist of your trousers. Now that's a very easy thing to say. It's not an easy thing to do if you're not used to doing that. And one of the best ways of learning to do that is to make a long, low vowel sound as you push out the bowel motion. And there's actually been research done on this, and they found that the sounds that work best are moo, or oo, or age. And it's not saying moo, oo, or age, it's saying ooh, or age. And if you make that kind of sound, you will feel your tummy pushing out in the way that I'm talking about. Now that doesn't mean you have to moo on the toilet for the rest of your life, but if you do this a few times and you get used to doing it, it will teach your brain a better strategy for pushing, and then you'll be able to do it without making the noise. So it's well worth trying. I'd encourage you to give it a go. And we can talk to you about that in more detail when we see you in physio. It can also help to give some support to your perineum when you're pushing. If you're feeling that something is coming down, if you're feeling that you just don't have the power there, sometimes just giving you a little bit of a lift to your perineum. So that's the area between your vagina and back passage. So put some tissue paper on your hand, put your hand on the area between your vagina and back passage, and just lift up gently and see, does that make things easier for you? For some patients that can make a massive difference. For other patients, they actually need to put a finger into the vagina and push backwards on the back of the vagina. And this is for people who have a rectocele or a back wall prolapse. And some poo can get stuck in that area, and then you end up straining and straining trying to get it out, and you feel like you're not emptying it fully. So some women intuitively will put a finger into their vagina and push backwards as they're pooping, and that can help them to poop a lot better. That's a bit messy. So some clever person designed this device called a FemEase, which is like a little shoehorn for putting inside the vagina and pushing back on that back wall to help them empty better without straining. So if you're interested in getting one of those, the links are here to stressnomore.co.uk, or you can also buy it on amazon.co.uk. If you Google FemEase, you'll find it. So other things that you can do to help yourself would be to wear supportive underwear. Giving a bit of a lift to the perineum can help. As we're walking around during the day, our pelvic floor can get tired. There can be a bit of a drag there, so wearing supportive underwear can really help with that. If you're having a lot of leaking, it's important to make sure that you have the right kind of pads. A lot of women use just regular pads without realising that there are specific pads in the market for urine as opposed to blood, and they absorb a lot better. So make sure you're using the right kind of pads. If you're using a lot of pads, you might be interested in using reusable underwear instead. This is underwear that's very absorbent for urine. It can hold hundreds of mils of urine, and you can throw it in the washing machine and wash it hundreds of times. So it can be very cost effective. So you can buy underwear like that from mypelvichealth.co.uk. They do a range called Wherever underwear, which are very helpful. If you're a smoker, I'd strongly encourage you to stop smoking for so many reasons, but particularly for your pelvic floor. If you're coughing a lot, that puts a lot of pressure on your pelvic floor and can aggravate your symptoms. Managing your weight can be helpful as well. If you lose some weight, that can make a big difference to stress incontinence. If you have prolapse symptoms and leaking with lifting things up, I would advise you to avoid heavy lifting until you've been assessed and advised by your physio for you in particular. And if you're having any leaking or feeling downward pressure with general exercises, just be cautious with them until you've had a chance to see your physio and they can give you specific advice for you. You can get started on your pelvic floor exercises while you're waiting to see us, and we have some videos on our website. So on the physiotherapy page, way down the bottom, if you scroll down to the bottom, you'll find various videos on pelvic floor exercises and bladder health and handouts you can have a look at. So I'd encourage you to start trying to do those exercises. There's some videos about how to find your pelvic floor, how to know if you're engaging it correctly, how to progress your exercises. So that's all there for you on the website. If you prefer, you can wait until you see your physiotherapist who will assess you. But if you're keen to get going, then have a look on the website for that information. So what do we do as physiotherapists for bladder problems and bowel problems and prolapse problems? Well, we have a look at your pelvic floor. We do internal examinations of the pelvic floor to see what's going on with the muscles, to see what their strength is like, to see what the tone of the muscle is like, to see what their coordination is like. Can you coordinate it with your breath? Can you coordinate your muscles with your tummy muscles? Can you coordinate it as you cough or sneeze? We look at how your tummy is working. Are you gripping your tummy too much? Is your tummy too loose? Is your tummy able to move with your breath? There's lots of things we can do to improve your pelvic floor function and your tummy function. If you have any scars there and they're causing restriction, we can work on that and help to improve the mobility of the scars. And then that improves the mobility of your tummy and your pelvic floor. We can look at your breathing and teach you how to breathe effectively to encourage your pelvic floor and tummy to engage properly. We can help you with managing pressure with your daily activities so you're not aggravating prolapse symptoms or leaking. So there's an awful lot that we do. I could talk to you for hours about it, so I'm not going to do that. Sometimes people are worried and they think, do I have to have an internal examination? You don't have to. It is really important to have one from our perspective to help assess your muscles properly. But if you're not comfortable having an internal examination, there's still plenty of things that we can do instead. So don't let it put you off coming for treatment. Sometimes women are still having their periods and they're afraid to come in if they have their period. You can still come to physiotherapy even with your period. There's plenty we can do externally, and sometimes the period is quite light, so we can still work internally. So don't let that put you off. Often women are concerned about, oh, I haven't shaved or I haven't waxed. You don't have to. If you want to, you can. It doesn't matter to us in the slightest, so please don't let that put you off. If you've been prescribed vaginal estrogen by your doctor, I would strongly recommend that you're taking it because that will make the examinations a lot more comfortable for you, and it helps with your bladder symptoms. It can help with your leakage and your urgency. It can help to prevent infections. So if you have a prescription for vaginal estrogen, please do take it as prescribed. There are various supports that you can buy for the bladder over the counter. Here are some examples of them. So there is the Euphemia bladder support. There's the Contiform support. There's the Divine. And you can buy them from different places. These are available over the counter, so you can buy it yourself if you wish, or if you prefer, you can wait to see us and we can have a discussion with you about which one we think might work for you best. But these supports can be very helpful when the urethra is just wobbling around a little bit too much and it needs to be stabilized a bit better. So some women find these very helpful. If you have a lot of dryness or soreness down below, they probably won't agree with you. But it's just to make you aware of that option while you're waiting. Other options to help with the pelvic floor is using electrotherapy. This is where you use electrical currents, sometimes in the vagina, sometimes in the back passage, or sometimes externally on your leg. That might seem a bit strange. I would not recommend that you use any electrotherapy without being assessed by a physiotherapist first, okay? Because they may not be appropriate for you at all, and you could be wasting your money or making your symptoms worse. However, when you've been assessed and we've advised you that electrotherapy would be helpful for you, it can make a big difference. So sometimes we use it internally, and like I say, sometimes we use it externally on the leg. There's a nerve in your leg that has a feedback loop to your bladder, and this can work really well for calming a bladder down. So we can discuss that more at your appointment. But please don't be buying gadgets or things like electrotherapy without being assessed by a physio first. Other things that we might work with you on in physiotherapy are self-managing pessaries. So you might have a ring in already. You might have been prescribed a ring by your doctor. It could be working very well for you. But some people like to have pessaries that they can remove themselves. They can put in and out as required. Or sometimes a different style of pessary is indicated, like a cube or a ring with a little knob on it that can control leakage a bit better. So this is a service we offer in physiotherapy. We can discuss that with you and see if it's appropriate for you. Just to make you aware, as you know, we have a waiting list and you're on that waiting list. It can get very long at times. So it's really important that you don't waste any of our appointments. So if you can't make an appointment, please give us at least 24 hours notice. If you don't attend an appointment and you do that 2 times, you will be discharged from physiotherapy, because we really need to manage our appointments well to make sure people are seen promptly. If you have any questions or comments from this video, please email us. So you can email us at physiotherapists, so it's the plural of physiotherapist, physiotherapists@rotunda.ie, and we will get back to you as soon as we can. Thank you very much for listening. Goodbye.